I want to comment some more on this Sopranos TV show. I actually never watched the show, and I wasn't really interested in watching the show when it was out. And I started watching some of the YouTube clips. And over the last several months, I actually did watch a lot of these YouTube clips on Sopranos. I noticed the guy that played Paulie, he really seemed to be the most real. And then when I looked up his Wikipedia background, yeah, he was real. He was in it. He spent time in federal penitentiaries, and he doesn't really have to act too hard to play the part. Um, and Tony, I can't even remember the guy's actor's name. I'm Tony, right? Um, Always a Tony or an Anthony. I swear to, because I've people I've dealt with, Tony. It's well, but he was very good in this. But you know what bothers me is if you look on YouTube, there's a video out there that says the real Sopranos, or is this the real Sopranos? And they showed it with an Italian family in New Jersey, with different things, their operations they run, economic enterprises or whatever, and they showed a correlation between the TV show and the Italian family, the real one, right? And then they say there's absolutely, it just happened to be a coincidence. And I'm going to tell you right now, there was no coincidence. It's ludicrous to think this. Now, if this Italian family that exists in reality today was some bigwigs like General Motors or something, or Microsoft, they'd be suing the hell out of the people that produced this show, Sopranos, because it was based on them. I mean, it actually got recorded on an FBI tape. They made a TV show about us and all this garbage, right? I'm going to tell you, though, there's one thing that kind of bugged me about this show, though. A few things, actually. One was they showed the people in TV land as super filthy rich. You know, that's not the reality of it. Actually, if you want to talk about the super filthy rich, they're usually involved in, banking or something, or their stock. Well, I don't know, maybe not a stockbroker. They could be in real estate. They could be in, one of the professional fields. Or they could be a cancer doctor, giving treatments to people that kill them and raking in the money for fat percentages. Of course, that's not the mafia, right? Uh-huh. Yeah, this is what kind of bugs me about a lot of this stuff, because it's another. I looked at this show and I actually liked it a lot. Well, some parts were pretty funny, man. To tell you the truth, man. I got a kick out of some of the lines that were said. And, but in a lot of ways, it is a smear on Italian Americans. Most Italian Americans are, I don't know, they're in a lot of different fields. I mean, they're construction, but they build stuff. I mean, they built houses, they do framing, they do electrical work, professional fields, accounting, attorneys, everything. Um, and the ones that are termed the mafia, I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of honor in it, even today. Now, one thing I have to comment a little bit on is that as each generation renews, it's a trend that's going on in every aspect of everything. I don't care what it is, that there's a little less dedication and honor than there was in the past. And that's true of, the Cosa Nostra too, probably. I mean, even though I can't really comment on it in detail, but it's like this across the board with everything, whether it's, whatever. It's like the newer generation is more me. You know, that's the people of hardship back in the Depression era and World War II era. Um, there was, even back down south, even in the South, people would do $100,000 cattle livestock deals on a handshake. They'd shake the guy's hand. I mean, talking, non-Italians, Southerners. They'd shake the guy's hand. They say, I'm going to deliver these cattle, and you're going to give me cash when they show up there and all this kind of crap. And it would be done on a handshake. You don't see too much of that anymore. I mean, it's still done, but it's usually the older generations. And I guess, this applies to across the board with everything. But, when I looked at this TV show, it was a little bit, I liked it. I mean, the two main characters, actually, Paulie was very, real. But I guess he's he's legit all the way. But, when I look at some of the stuff that's going on today, you know, I can tell you one person I can't stand who's quote unquote Italian American or maybe half Italian American is Mayor de Blasio, New York City. This guy, they should make a movie about him for crying out loud. This guy is the garbage. I mean, it's horrible. And it kind of gets me that he made it to be mayor. And it's kind of telling me something else too, because back in the day, I think it was Joseph Colombo Jr. or something that came out and he pushed for the Italian American Anti-Defamation League. I think it's Italian American Civil Rights League or something. And the real mafia didn't like all the attention it was bringing, right? And they killed a guy, supposedly, and I think that's what happened, right? Man, you look at so many other stuff that's going on, I'm like, God, compared to what Joseph Colombo was doing, I think the guy was doing a good thing in a lot of ways, but I don't know. But everything we got, I look at the United States, I tell you the truth, I look at the United States as a rebirth of Rome. That's what it was. I mean, Italy today is not what Rome was back in the day. Even the language, the Italian language, is more artsy, flavorful, mellower. Even look at the language of Latin, it's more austere, with authority. Basically, if we're going to build a road, it's going to be a straight road. If there's a valley, we build a bridge. If there's a mountain, we're going to put a tunnel through it. If there's a river, we're going to have, another bridge across the river. It was a stoic, austere discipline. And I think that still exists in Italy too, and it still exists in some Italian Americans. But it's not like the way it was 2,000 years ago. I don't think it anyway. But somewhat, it's still there. But I don't like the way they presented a lot of stuff on TV with the Sopranos. There was way too much money shown, too much glitz, too much glamour. There's a lot more work involved in things where people aren't making that much money, and you're wondering why they're actually doing it, because the reason they're doing it, it's not just a business venture. It's a code of honor. It's just a way of life that's circumventing the government. In other words, I think, what was it, one of the things they talked about, Michael Francis, whatever, I'm not familiar with his names, but he was avoiding paying sales tax on gasoline. And, they'd open up all these different companies and the government would be behind them, but they would be so slow to catch up, they would always avoid paying sales tax on their gasoline tax, right? Whatever it was. But you think about it, you're saying, who's the criminal here? First off, the government is so damn slow and stupid to collect the taxes and so incompetent, and you're paying the government with taxes to do a job, and they're not doing their damn job, and they're still getting paid because they're just a bump on a log. And then when these taxes aren't paid to the government for gasoline taxes, where's the money going? Right directly back into the economy, directly into the people's economy, not into the government sloughs. You ever think of that? You ever think of that angle? Of course, nobody thinks of that angle, do they? No, not at all. And that's another thing that kind of annoys me. One thing that bugged the crap out of me on that Sopranos show was how they made the FBI and the cops look so high and mighty and squeaky clean. They are not. And you know what? If you look today at James Comey, and also look back at J. Edgar Hoover. I mean, even Truman himself, he said they were like Truman, Harry S. Truman, our president. He was commenting on the FBI that they were like growing into a Gestapo spy agency. Harry S. Truman, our former president. You know, the buck stops here. You know that? That's the reality of the situation. But it's like popular. You see, you gotta have a bogeyman to justify your existence. So I mean, it's not exactly like law enforcement's all squeaky clean, and the bad guys are, the organized crime. Organized crime is not organized. It's entrepreneurship. That's what the hell it is. It's laissez-faire capitalism. Sometimes there's things going on where they're paying, I'm forcing you to pay for protection, but then a lot of times, what are you doing when you're paying for taxes for cops that don't do anything to protect you, right? Look what's going on in Europe, right? People are paying taxes out to yin yang, and there's all kinds of problems going on there, right? Now, one thing that kind of bugs me too, is this guy Rudy Giuliani, the big freaking RICO Act guy, the one that was going after the organized crime, the mayor of New York. Here he is, Rumsfeld, right? 911. The New York City Police all knew that this guy knew ahead of time that 911 was going to the building was going to come down, or was very likely to come down. He didn't warn any of the cops in the fire department. He's like this big, law enforcement guy, but the reality of it is, he's all hooked in with the freaking the biggest crooks in the world, like the Bush family and the Rumsfeld. Who's worse than that? Is the Italian mafia worse? Would the Italian mafia bring down freaking World Trade Center for a few bucks? No. Or because we got to go to war with Iran or something, or what I mean, or Iraq. So we got an excuse to go to war, right? So we can make a lot of money. You see what I'm saying? That's real big business. You're talking Italian mafia. You're talking like, strippers, prostitution, some recreational drugs, some gambling, things like that, right? It's stuff that people want to do anyway, just whatever they, for fun or whatever the hell it is. Or maybe they're selling cigarettes without taxes or something, or you're selling gasoline with no taxes collected or something, or whatever, maybe they're reselling moonshine in liquor stores or something. I don't know. Big deal. That's free enterprise, really. It's not like what the heck's going on at the top levels. And this Rudy Giuliani's a piece of garbage, man. I don't like this guy, man. To tell you the truth, I don't like De Blasio. I don't like Cuomo. But those are Italian Americans. Or De Blasio, actually, I think is a German Italian, really. But you look at Rudy Giuliani. He's supposed to be this conservative Republican, anti-mob guy. He's right in there with George Bush and Rumsfeld. You know what's going on. See what I'm saying? Kind of annoys me, to tell you the truth. There is actually a code of honor with the Italians and the Jews. Italians and Jews work together. Like I don't know if I should reveal this. I keep remembering that guy. Now, my boss wasn't like Tony in Sopranos, but my Jewish boss was Tony. It's like one guy who was Tony. I was his eternal accountant for many years, right? He's a good guy, though. He's a very good guy. I liked him a lot. And that's revealing a lot right there. But there's only one Jewish guy named Tony. But there is a lot of honor. There is a lot of honor in the smaller families. There is. I know it's not perfect, but then neither are all these other organizations that try to display this squeaky clean public image. The military displays that, law enforcement displays that. They're not squeaky clean. Not in the least, man. Not even close. And it all depends on who is actually involved, because some people have honor, some people have integrity, and You know, you got to make sure you don't piss people off, though. I mean, people could have a lot of honor and integrity. You don't want to piss them off, or hit the wrong buttons. But the deal is that it's like that. There's a lot of honor and integrity in what you call, you know, I don't know, criminals or whatever the hell it is. I mean, it used to get me because people was like, I mean, it was one thing back in the '60s when they're distributing pornography or something like that, and the guy's coming in there busting this guy. He's some old fat Italian guy freaking selling some porno garbage on the side, making a few bucks out of a back room in a store. Like, big deal, man. What the hell? It's nothing. And it's not like you're making people buy this shit. People want. I mean, that was before it was legal and stuff. But people, and then you got the government coming in there. You know what I mean? But it's not. It's not. It's just business. That's all it is. It's just free enterprise. Free enterprise without governmental restriction. Back in the day. But if you really go back and you turn back the clock, the Roman honor was. Even then, it wasn't perfect. Humans are never flawless. Everything's always remembered better than it is a lot of times, still. But, they used to have for the Roman soldier, they used to reward them, like, instead of the Medal of Honor, it would be the Philera, right? Philera. But that would be the badge of Roman honor, for fighting the enemy and stuff. But, the deal is, even then, even during the Roman times, nothing was perfect. Nothing was. But, when I look at this show with the Sopranos, it was based upon real families. It wasn't probably based exactly on one family. Maybe it was mainly quite a bit on the New Jersey Mafia. Possibly it was. And there was added in pieces and elements from various stories that were out there that were reality. But it was all based upon reality. But the movie producers or the TV show producers are never going to say that we based this on this group or that, because first off, they would, they get slammed for it, or they'd have to cut them a piece of the action or some garbage like that. You know what I mean? They'd have to cut them a check or percentage or something to make an agreement because they use their name. They use that because they're going to deny it. But it's obvious that the Sopranos. I mean, they're showing this one guy, these guys in that pork store on a corner, and the real guys were like maybe a couple blocks away or a block away. I mean, that's not a coincidence. And the same thing in a pork store. There's too many analogies there, and but I always look at like what they were doing. Like, in other words, say for instance you're placing a bet on horse races. It's illegal betting, or they'll tell you, oh, promotion of gambling or whatever the hell it is. I don't gamble. I'm not involved in it. I don't even know nothing about it. But say for instance you make this bet and you win. Okay, it's all under the table. There's no taxes involved or anything like that. All this garbage. And you got better odds with the mafia or organized crime or whatever you want to call them, right? Free entrepreneurs. That's really what I call it. Without a government interference. Of course, if it's gambling with the government, then it's like taxed. It's got lousier odds. Lotteries are the worst odds going. But the thing is, they pay the money when you win. It's like, you think these guys are freaking just as solid as the biggest banks out there. They're going to make the payment. If you win that horse race, they're going to make the payment. They're not going to, renege on your your bet. They're not going to do that. They got honor. That's a lot why it works, too. There's honesty there. A lot of honesty. Why do you think the freaking flow of goods and economic activity keeps going? Even though there's no contractual, double-signed, notarized agreements all over the place, there's agreements that are honored. It's about doing business. And I know the problem is, I know each generation today is getting a little more greedy, a little more myself and me and I, but that's not, and I know the governmental people that are law enforcement, they like to point out how much that's getting into the quote-unquote organized crime, but it's getting into them too, big time, big time. The government, Jimmy Comey, haha, Hillary Clinton. What about what's her face, Janet Reno? Remember her? Mm-hmm. It's a joke and a half, man. Really, what's going on? But you know, I personally think that the Italians and the Jews and the Southern Confederates are very much in groups of people that have a lot of honor, but in a lot of ways are looked down upon by the bigger majority of Americans out there, because there is kind of a media campaign against the Italians, because oh, the mafia and all this. The mafia is not, I don't know, it's just it's freaking business, basically. I mean, you look in Japan. I mean, they got the same kind of damn thing going on left and right over there. Same thing. Now, the Confederates, I mean, you look at what happened after the war between the states. They had to do a lot of things to survive, because there was military exploitation and reconstructionists coming down south and screwing them over. So you had, they were fighting the scallywags and stuff, right? So, I mean, you say, oh, the bushwhackers, the mafia, the bushwhackers, whatever. Same kind of thing. Same kind of thing. But today, the groups that are ostracized by basically the media and the propaganda media, which I have to say, it's sort of like the, I don't know what you can call it. It's almost like that, the main part of America, because Italians are a minority, Jews are a minority, and true Confederates down south are a minority. They're always portrayed in a certain way on the media, like it makes them look bad. It always makes it look like they got this crooked angle that everything's coming their way and stuff. And that's even like I think Jews make out a little more money than most people, but they're more intelligent, they work harder, and most Jews don't make a lot of money. I mean, not everybody's a Bloomberg, for crying out loud, you know what I mean? But some of our most hardcore traditions, actually, in the United States, and what the core of really what America's about and its freedoms, and pretty much a lot of things we take for granted, really comes from ancient Rome. A lot of people, and the one thing I have to admire about the Confederates, they were very much aware of this. They viewed, rightfully so, when the Yankees came down and invaded the South, they viewed them as barbarian invaders, and they actually were. Abe Lincoln was taking people that were coming right in off the boat from Germany and Ireland, didn't even speak English, putting them in a blue uniform so they could go kill Americans down south. They were just trying to defend their farms and their family. And today they still got a smear against them. But one thing I have to admire greatly about the Southerners too, they're very much well studied in the classical histories. They knew, the history written by Titus Livius, the great Roman historian, or Cicero, or whatever, right? They knew the 12 Caesars, who they were. Julius Caesar, Caius Octavius Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, Nero, Galba, Otho, Vitellius, Vespasian, Titus, Domitian. I still remember, first 12 Caesars. And actually, even you look at this emblem, the eagle. It's the Roman shield. And you look at today, what's the symbol of the United States? The eagle. You know what the eagle really was from? It was from Rome. But why did the Romans use it? It was considered the messenger from Jupiter, the strongest of the gods, Jupiter. That's why they used it. There's a lot in the structure of the United States, including our three branches of government that are supposed to be a balance against each other that came from the Roman Republic. Unfortunately, we're going more to an empire right now. You know, that's the thing. But, you know, I have to agree with a lot of things that I think it was Joseph Colombo Jr. was doing way back when with the Italian-American Anti-Defamation League. But, you know, the rumor is he got killed for getting too much attention to, you know, what was going on with, you know, business enterprises and stuff in the background. But, you know, I look at somebody who's like, to me, this guy's a disgrace. De Blasio. He's an absolute disgrace. But maybe he's not really Italian. He's got an Italian last name, but he's half German, too. You gotta remember this. So I don't know what the side of him actually is stronger than the other. I'm half Italian by DNA. So I'm half Italian. I'm also Confederate heritage on my other side. Confederate Italian, whatever the hell that is. But, you know, I'm actually half Italian DNA, which is even far more than just having half Italian last name. Because actually my father must have had some Italian in him. It's like, it was kind of a surprise to me because I got quite a bit more Italian DNA than I thought. But when I looked at this Sopranos show, it was good in a way. And I still like watching some of these YouTube clips. But, you know, they made it look like, you know, probably more closer to the reality was, you know, when they showed a pork store with the Italian sauces over here, you know, and they showed these big houses with, you know, they didn't live in these big houses like this, these mansions, you know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? The money wasn't there. And if you look at some of the worst stuff that's going on today, I can tell you one of the things I can't stand what's going on the most is probably in the medical field. You know, you look at what's going on with these cancer doctors, for instance. You know, you ever hear chemotherapy or radiation actually having a success rate past 3 or 5 years? Not really. You have a much better success rate changed to a vegan diet, right? But, you know, they get kickbacks on everything. Oh, and also, look at even, you know, this Tony Soprano. He visited this psychiatrist or something in the show, right? You know, in reality, those psychiatrists, they're some of the biggest drug dealers going. They're passing out drugs to, like, 5-year-old kids, getting them hooked on stuff. You know what I mean? Because that's how they make money. But, you know, nobody looks at that as organized crime or the mafia, but they got this TV show over here. You know? I don't really like the way they presented a lot of this stuff because they didn't really present a lot of the honorable side to a lot of things. In other words, you know, say for instance you're making bets on horse races. Guy wins a lot of money, he gets a lot of money. It's tax-free. They make the payment. Fine. You know what I mean? Somebody's getting a better deal on cigarettes. Fine. You know? You got crazy, hot-looking chicks you can hook up with. Fine. Okay? People having fun. What's wrong with that, right? You know, actually, you know what I think? The future of the mafia ought to be the medical field. And this would be my angle on this thing. Because it's like, I don't even, you shouldn't, I guess you really could. Well, if you want to use the word mafia, so what? Use the word mafia. Because, you know, maybe this would be the thing that actually wakes up to the public, wakes the public up that, you know, there's honor involved. But, you know, one of the things they know that's one of the, a couple things, for instance, examples of two big cures in the medical field is intravenous vitamin C. You're going to get that in a hospital. I mean, you're not going to even get a judge to give you a court order to give that to you in a hospital. Most of the time, a lot of times people get, you know, blood infections that kill them. They pick them up in a hospital and they give them all these antibiotics and nothing works. They give them intravenous vitamin C, it work like crazy. You can't get it. Now, say you had, you know, Italian doctor. Look at Dr. Tullio Simoncini from Italy. He was curing cancer left and right, hooking people up for nothing with the baking soda treatments, right? He lost his medical license, right? You could say, oh, he's mafia, right? You know what I mean? I actually think the health side, because the way things are going, it's like, I mean, I think the entire health care system in the United States is an arm of Agenda 21 and depopulate the earth, to tell you the truth. And yet, nobody's drawing much attention to that. They'll go look at, somebody look at this TV show and say, But say, for instance, the real guys were pushing health products which were very effective in healing people, like intravenous vitamin C, or, even ozone treatment. Try to get that in the United States. You have a hard time getting that. Ozone baths, or you got to be a very highly trained medical professional, though, to give intravenous ozone therapy. But even that works very well in many cases. Combine that with glutathione and intravenous vitamin C. Yeah, people have Ebola or something, it'll cure them, right? Maybe that should be the freaking angle. I don't know how this would work because the biggest problem is the damn government. Government's hooked in with the real criminals. That's Rudy Giuliani and 911. See, I don't really think, there's a lot of, I can't say, the exact quote-unquote organized crime Italian families are a bunch of saints. But then I obviously know the government isn't by any means. No way in hell. Not even close. And when they make shows like The Sopranos, it is conditioning to the public to make the public. It's an interesting story, and it's got some funny lines in it too. It's like some stuff in there kind of cracked up on, especially when these guys are going after the Russian guy in the pine barrens in the snow. I kind of liked that episode a lot, man. When they were doing that, there was some funny shit in there. And actually, the generation before me, the ones that are really from Italy, they grew up in a Russian neighborhood. They grew up in a Russian. So I'm kind of, the Russian friends were still friends for many years. As a matter of fact, I worked for a Russian colonel when I came down here, down in the south. I worked for a Russian colonel, Jewish Russian colonel, former colonel, and they make it look like these guys are all the bad guys, and they're not. And that's the thing. It's like they're not that. It's not that clear cut, because it's a business, and it wouldn't exist as a business if there wasn't a demand. It's like, even when Al Capone was around, in Chicago, he never would have had a business model if they didn't push for prohibition. Then why did they push for prohibition? They pushed for prohibition because John D. Rockefeller had to knock out the competition coming from the alcohol produced by farmers for his gasoline product that was being sold in the cities to fuel the cars. Because cars that back then, the Ford Model Ts, were able to run on farmers produced alcohol too. And most people preferred the alcohol fuel because it burned much cleaner, it was cheaper, and since it burned much cleaner, the oil stayed much cleaner, and that caused the engines to last much longer. That's why Prohibition came about, was to knock out the competition for Standard Oil's gasoline product and stop the farmers from producing alcohol for cars. Then in 1932, which was 11 years after Prohibition was going full steam, that's when they pushed in the gasoline tax. And then years later, you have, I don't know if I'm saying the guy's name right. I know I'm saying Michael right. Michael Francis. You know, he's avoiding paying gasoline tax, but I'm thinking, why did they even freaking come up with gasoline tax in the first place? Gasoline tax was put in place during the Great Depression to keep the government going and destroy the economy where it's trying to survive. Like, in other words, what was an activity that required a lot of energy and gasoline? Farming, because of the tractors. It's always a very, so look what was going on. You had the Dust Bowl. You had the problems with you know, the big Dust Bowl and stuff in the 1930s, and of course you have the gasoline tax on top of it to even put more economic hardship on the farmers. And you know what happened then? Then big business came in and took over the farms, government subsidies, and all this other garbage. I don't like this de Blasio guy. I can't stand this jerk. I think this de Blasio is about 10,000 times worse than anything Joseph Colombo Jr. did. I think that's the guy's name that did, you know, started the Italian American Anti-Defamation League. Blasio is way worse. And this guy Giuliani, he's full of it. I don't buy his bull crap for nothing. I'm surprised the cops don't say more about this guy, because, you know, they all know what happened to their own guys when they were left in that building, and he knew what was going on, it was going to happen. He knew. Here he is right with Rumsfeld, and here he is again right next to freaking George Bush, who knew all the stuff that's going on, and Chucky Schumer in the background, you know. And they got to make movies about, you know, Sopranos or something, right? Big crooks are right here. You're looking at them. These are the crooks. Not the firemen, okay? I'm not talking about the firemen on the right. I'm talking about Giuliani, George Bush, and Chucky Schumer, okay? These are the crooks. So anyway, this is my take on this, and I don't know. Sometimes I'm kind of I look at these things that you put on TV. A lot of it is simply conditioning for the public. It's propaganda. And you know, J. Edgar Hoover, even way back when, used to get involved directly in with Hollywood to make sure nothing bad was said about the agency. As a matter of fact, the CIA is all involved in Hollywood. A lot of times, even these criminal shows they got out there, they go, they catch this guy and stuff. You know how many times they got I think even the FBI itself says there's 5 to 10% of the people that are in prison today did absolutely nothing wrong. They got the completely wrong guy. It's probably more like 20% in reality. When they're admitting it's 5 to 10%. You hear that? But they always got to make it look like they did something, because when they did something, that puts a feather in the cap for the guy that's the prosecutor, right? And you're saying the organized crime guys are the bad guys? And that's what you pay taxes for? Try not paying your taxes. You want to know what, you know, what extortion really is? What protection money really is? That's what you're paying to the government, protection money. I said there's a lot of gray areas involved in everything. So anyway, enough for that. I said enough here. My computer made a little screen. Over and out.